we see this happen with clients a lot where they just, and it's usually clients that are like kind of nervous about the future and kind of like just unsure. And it's like you negotiate. And they're like, oh, well, just wait, there's just one more thing. And you're like, okay. And you go back with the other side and you try to negotiate and you get that issue resolved. And it's like, oh, one more thing. Right?
Right.
And that's kind of the cycle of what happens.
Well, a lot of times negotiating these cases is like playing musical chairs. And sometimes the deal that you get is the deal that you get when the music stops. And the court has various ways of making the music stop. You can take the case to mediation and help and have somebody like Tammy and me help you to get the case resolved. Or the court can send you to a conference called a mandatory settlement conference, where you negotiate the case with the help of a settlement judge. And the ultimate stoppage of the music, which is a finding after trial. So you have the trial and you put all your ducks out there, and then the music stops and the court issues a judgment. But either way, at some point in the process, you have to be finished.
Right.
And therein lies the rub, because people often are not ready to be finished.
Right.
And so in a way, I want you to come into these negotiations and these mandatory settlement conferences and mediations and even the trial with an idea of where you want to be when the music stops. Because that ultimately is going to be your judgment, and that's what you're going to have to live with. So what we want to do is get you where you want to go. So when the music stops, you have some solutions.
Right.
All right. So I would say the first thing that causes this, and my first point is that people go into these negotiations and they go into their divorces without a plan, without a reasonable picture of what they actually want to have happen, other than to make the other party's life miserable, right?
Well, or we hear people say things like, I want what's fair. I want to get what I deserve, and all that kind of thing. And, we'd love to tell you this process is fair and that you're going to come out of it feeling like it went well. But the fact of the matter is you're not. Sure. Nobody walks out of this feeling happy. Right. It's just not how it goes.
Right. As mediators, if both parties are equally unhappy with the settlement, then we feel like we've done our job.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you read about negotiation and negotiation techniques, they say one of the biggest things is knowing what you have a plan, knowing what you want, going in, instead of just kind of throwing it up and say, oh, just let the court give me whatever's fair.
Right. You have to go into these negotiations decide with a decision as to what you're willing to let go of, what you need for the future. And what I always recommend is that you do kind of some writing about where you want to be 5 years from now.
Yeah, and we talk about that a lot, about the future perspective. Once you figure out what you want that life in the future to look like, the decisions come much easier.
Absolutely.
And I think that people going through a divorce, myself included, when I was going through this, we tend to get kind of stuck in this frame of mind of, I don't want anything to change. Right. I want everything to be the same, because the divorce is so much chaos in itself that we're trying to get some stability, and so we just don't want anything else to change.
So what I try to do is, number one, we have our dream sheet, and I think early on in an early episode we gave away the dream sheet. It's just it's a tool that I use with clients to help them decide what they value, what they truly value. So you may want to stay in the house, and you may also want to have lots of time with the kids. Right. And you may also want to start a new career. Right. Or you may want to just sit around on the couch. Many people want to do that. It's not necessarily a viable way to go, but you have to decide, well, looking forward, is that what I want my life to look like?
Right.
So here's what sitting on the couch looks like. Sitting on the couch means having to collect support from your ex and constantly living under the threat that he's going to come into court and reduce your order.
Or just not pay.
Which is
what mine chose to do.
Okay. Let me tell you, that's not a position of power.
Right.
That's not a position of control. The person that you can depend on the most is yourself.
Right.
Right. And so that has to go into it. So when you're doing your dream sheet, where do you work? Where do you play? What are your hobbies? Who are your friends? What church do you go to if you're a religious person? And where is this money coming from? Okay. So we have the dreams of where we want to be and what kind of relationships we want to have with our kids and what kind of life we want to lead and what we want to do with our career. So that's the dream side. And on the other side is the resources side. So on the resources side, you want to make an accounting of what's available. These are the kinds of things that you want to think about before you start negotiating. And then you want to make a list or a spreadsheet of what's there. You've got the 401ks for retirement, and you've got, maybe there's a pension, maybe there's some IRAs, maybe there's there's equity in the properties, and all of these things. And then there's, of course, your job and his or her job that provide income. And you want to put that all on the resource side.
Right.
And then let's figure out what your best alternative to a
negotiated agreement.
Yeah. What's your best alternative to a negotiated agreement? In other words, what's your bottom line?
Right.
You want everything that you ask for in the negotiation to be something that fits into your life plan.
Right. Not just to be asking for it because you got to get one more thing. I have people that say, well, if he agreed, I must not have asked for enough.
Yeah, you get that all the time. And I see that. That's a good point. And that's not on my outline, but I'd love to talk about that. They think, he gave me what I wanted. Well, then I must ask for something else now.
Right. Right. But this is a game with no end.
Right.
I mean, this is a game that goes on and on and on. And in the meantime, you're enduring the cost of it, the mental anguish of the negotiations back and forth, constantly having to deal with this person, things constantly being in a state of flux. At least once you get down to a negotiated agreement and you sign, you start creating some post-divorce stability at that point.
Right. And you're done.
Right.
And you can move on with life, which is really if there's one theme throughout the podcast, it's that the person who moves on with life is the winner.
That's right.
The bottom line is, don't be the just one more thing litigant in your family law case.
Right. Let there be an end.
Yeah. Don't be that person, and don't be that person that has to have a concession for everything.
Right.
Instead, go into the negotiation with an overarching plan and have everything you ask for be part of that plan.
Right.
Consider what is realistically possible given the resource pile that you have documented. And then ask for those things that you need to make your post-divorce life happen, and let go of those things that you don't really need.
Right.
Let them have those things.
There you go. Well said. All right. So if you are listening to us on YouTube, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our channel so you get notified as more videos release. If you're listening to us on the podcast and you haven't checked out the YouTube channel, go over and listen to those. Go over and watch them. You get to see us. You get to see the expressions and the interaction. It's a little more interesting. And if you're listening to us on the YouTube channel and you haven't checked out the podcast, then you're missing the full episode. So make sure you check that out. If you are listening to the podcast, please rate and review us where you're listening to us at so that we can reach more people. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands.